Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us, both in person and virtually. I am Eli Zich. My pronouns are he, him. I am a proud trans man. I have to say that taking the stage and hearing the sections before this now, I am overwhelmed with an immense amount of pride and emotion. I don't think 5-year-old me would have ever seen this as a possibility, let alone 25-year-old or 30-year-old. So thank you so much for being here. It means the world to us and our community. So I'm Eli. I will be moderating this discussion on inclusion's role in recruiting Gen Z and Alpha talent. Before we jump into the conversation, I would love to introduce our panelists. We are joined by David Graham, Senior Vice President of Customer Success, Tia Bradley, Staff Offering Program Manager of Talent Acquisition, and Daniel Human from the Gender Cool Project. A little bit about, we might have a lot of clapping through this.
Yeah, let's go.
And to be honest, we are an energized bunch, so bear with us, because we might laugh quite a bit. So I want to mention a little bit about the Gender Cool Project. So the Gender Cool Project aims to replace misinformed opinions with power and positive experiences with meeting transgender and non-binary young people who are thriving. Daniel, who's with us, is one of the founding members of the Gender Cool Project and champion. So thank you for being with us. And also, you were with us for the first Trans Summit, so welcome back.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So let's first acknowledge that Gen Z and Gen Alpha represent the future of our workforce and our leadership. They bring with them both unique perspectives, values, and expectations. Because of that, we need to start considering how inclusion plays a pivotal role in attracting or retaining talent from these generations. A recent study found that in the United States, 16% of Gen Zers and 15% of millennials identify as LGBTQ plus IA, well, plus after the IIA, compared with 8% of Gen Xers and 2% of baby boomers. So that calls out quite a large shift as we look at future generations. These stats highlight changes in the workplace for trans and non-binary individuals and the broader society. To kick off the discussion, I'd love to start with you, Tia, as a member of our talent acquisition team. We started by talking about how Gen Z and Gen Alpha are the future leaders of the workforce. Can you first tell us about Intuit's approach to these generations, and then tell us about what we're doing for trans and non-binary inclusion?
Yes, definitely. Thank y'all so much for having me, first of all. And so I'd like to start off with how, while diversity is going to be a fact, inclusion is the action that is taken. And so DEI is embedded in Intuit's culture, and it's really how we operate as a company. So it's important to talk about, too, all of the work that we are doing, what action that we're taking. Now, first off, I'll tell you that when it comes to our hiring process, we're never going to hire based on how someone identifies or any of their physical attributes, because we are an equal opportunity employer. When it comes to our hiring assessment process, we are looking at what skills and capabilities are going to make someone be most successful to do the role. But something that is really cool about Intuit is the work that we do to create that inclusive space, because truly that is where innovation is going to grow and cultivate. And so we have a lot of ways. I probably could be here all day talking about all of the great things that we're doing, but I want to highlight a couple components, one being our amazing employee resource groups. So I myself am an ERG leader. I'm the Global African Ancestry Network leader. And thank you. So I, also being at Intuit for 18 years, I've seen the progress that ERGs have made, right? I think initially building community and being kind of social networks to truly being resources to our employees and the business, right? We're in this space here. So when I think about networks like NextGen, who are building that community, creating spaces for folks to get professional development, and we still have fun as well. Like I know in our Slack channel we'll be talking about Beyonce's album dropping
Yes,
this evening.
today.
Just saying, I had to mention
Tonight.
it.
Let's go.
So, but it truly is, we help curate those experience and inspire our employees. The next thing is going to be, showing up as an ally. I know myself, I have been fortunate to attend the Trans Summit since its inception back in 2019. And it's been an amazing way to educate myself and how can I show up as an ally in these spaces. We just talked about in the previous talk, whether it's next to you, behind you, or whatever needs to happen to support. So it's so amazing that we're doing this because truly, if folks can see themselves, they can be themselves. And that's really important in this environment. And lastly, I'll just say, we have a ton of voluntary trainings, DEI trainings that folks can be a part of and really help cultivating those connections and learning and educating. So I'm just really happy to be a part of Intuit and really able to see that progression and changes that have happened.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, your comment around seeing yourself surrounded by the people that you show up to work with, that really hits home for me. When I found out that this event existed and this community at Intuit was here, that was the reason I signed my offer letter. And I actually saw my referral somewhere in the crowd who reminded or actually informed me that look at this space that we have at Intuit. Come be a part of it. So it's really, really powerful. Daniel, when you think about your future employer, what are the most important characteristics and the benefits that you're considering?
Such a good question. There's a lot. I think the most important one is that company supports me, and they do that by standing up for policies that they do not agree with. They make sure that they only stand up for policies that foster a community of acceptance and that allow their employees and customers to be themselves and feel safe in that area. So once again, just having a company that is very vocal about policies they do agree with is very, very important. Another thing is that's already been talked about a little bit is the environment. I think this is very big. When I'm thinking about where I want to be in the future, I want to be in a place that feels very welcoming and is very warm and is just a place I want to, and I feel accepted to be myself. And that's with colors, which Intuit does amazing. It has always been my favorite place to come so far because the aesthetic of it all is so incredible, and it makes me feel comfortable to express myself and be creative. And I think that's really the most important thing, is having that environment that makes people feel like they want to go there. They want to work. They want to put their opinion into this, their work. And this is a little thing, but what I think about is having plants. I think plants is big. And I think I think it's very big. It seems small, but it shows that they want life. They're conscious of life.
Right.
And they're encouraging people to breathe natural air and to just have an environment where life is fostered and encouraged. And the other thing I want to touch on is gender-neutral bathrooms. I think that's very important. I will not be working at a company that does not have gender-neutral bathrooms. And it is so important because it is a safe place you can go. I feel like when I'm going to the bathroom, that does not need to be a public thing. It does not need to be something where I have to choose which bathroom I'm going into. I should just be able to go into a space that is just for me to be able to go to the bathroom and then leave. It is a place where I can feel safe, and I think it's very important because it encourages and it makes an area and an environment where people feel like they have a place they can go if they need to. And I think it's still okay to have male and female bathrooms, but also having that other option of this is another place you can go where you can feel safe.
Daniel, I have to say that when you told me about the comment about living plants, I immediately gave that feedback to almost everyone that I knew. I was like, we have got to get living plants in here.
Yeah.
We have to represent life. We have to bring that into the environment. But what I also hear from you is it's not just the environment that you show up to in terms of who's in the room, but it's the aesthetic. It's what it feels like and how important that is. Thanks for sharing. David, as Intuit's leader for customer success, you have, pardon me, let's pivot, go back.
Pivot.
We'll pivot.
We'll pivot. It's okay.
David, as Intuit's leader for customer success, attracting and retaining talent is critical to your business.
Yep.
How are you and your leaders in your organization thinking and hiring a multi-generational workforce? And what are these things that you're seeing that are important to Gen Z and Alpha talent?
Awesome. Well, first of all, I can tell you how happy I am to be here with you all. I guess I'm the baby of the Trans Summit. This is my first, but I will be back every year that I am here. This is my first year that I got an invite, and I am here. So happy. I was telling my husband this morning, I am so happy to get to hang out with you all. So that's my first thing. Well, I'm going to go for plants as my first thing now. So plants and living creatures. But on a serious note, I think a lot of what Daniel just said is what is the inspiration for us, which is, as we think about stories in an officer meeting for the company, and I'd only relatively been here a short time, we got exposed to a number of Gen Z people who came to talk to us and tell us actually what they were looking for. And I'm going to be honest, I had no idea prior to that moment what we had to be thoughtful of. And from that moment, it's really been, if you think about the bookkeepers and accountants and tax professionals that we have that support our customers, the percentage of Gen Z is relatively small right now, but we know it's going to be so much bigger, and we know that we have to attract more. So, I think a lot of the things that Daniel said, storytelling for me is one of the most important parts of how we tell the story of our company, how we tell the story of being good global citizens. You hear Daniel talk about policies and the things that we stand for. Within our expert network, we're really harnessing this storytelling so that people can sort of relate to what it is where they're going to come work. They all have choices. And how do we make sure that those choices match up to what's inside? Often we have a lot inside of the doors of Intuit that we don't say outside. So how can we use that to help make sure we explain where we are, and more importantly, where are we headed? Because we're not perfect at everything, and how do we continue to tell that story? I think I hear it from Hemera regularly. You see it in our diversity reporting. We have a commitment to societal challenges, and those are important that we continue to tell that story for candidates. We continue to make sure that in our messaging that goes out, when people may be passive, not considering roles. One of the very first things that I read when making a decision to come here, and I've told Hemera this many times, was that DEI, that CSO, so corporate social responsibility report. That told me that Intuit was clear about where they were doing well and where they still had more to go. And I think continuing to use that as opportunities for Gen Z and others is a toolkit that we're using to continue to show that not only do we talk a good talk, the results and the outcomes that we have demonstrate that. So that's one that we're working on. I think the other one, which is a continued evolution and learning for me, is, often we talk about diversity beyond race and gender, and I think that's really important. Daniel's mentioned it a lot, is continuing to make sure that we are a place where your identity and orientation is not just spoke about, it's celebrated. And this is a place where you have the opportunity as a Gen Z person coming in the door, that this is a natural place for you to come because there are many others that are around like you and celebrated for being them. So that's another one. And, introducing a new generation to the workforce, I think is a scary thought. And just to be super transparent, it's if I wasn't worried by that, you should be worried about me. It's like I am worried about it because I want to make sure that our teams create an environment that is welcoming to them and welcoming in a place where the requirements and values, like Daniel mentioned, are something they see here every day, and that our managers know how to motivate and engage and take care of this new workforce coming in. And then, I think for me, expert network as a whole, you think we have thousands of experts out there talking to customers now. We have the ideal opportunity to create the most diverse network in the world. And that's inclusive of everything and everybody. So, I think continuing to focus on that is high up on my team's agenda.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I hear both the intentionality of storytelling, of where we are in our journey and where we're going.
Where we're going,
and how we
yeah.
share that.
Yeah, and how we get better every day. What some of my team tell me the other day, like 1% better every day. What do we learn? What do we change? What do we adjust? What do we get better at?
I love that. Tia, the people on your team are often the first points of contact with potential candidates. I'd love to understand how you're ensuring your team themselves feel a sense of belonging and inclusion so that they can then represent that to future talent.
Of course. So I mentioned that I've been at Intuit for quite some time. I started off in our customer success organization. And I actually transitioned to talent acquisition 3 years ago. And one thing that excited me about the role was being a part of candidates' first impression of Intuit, right? So our recruiters and our sourcers, those folks are the ones that are connecting with our candidates first. So we want to equip them with the tools and resources that they need to create those inclusive experiences and show the work that Intuit is doing. But it starts with making sure that they feel that inclusivity themselves. One of my favorite parts about our org is we have a culture club. So it's a committee of folks that are assigned to not only amplifying these cultural moments in time, but really celebrating our uniqueness, that diversity that is happening. I'll tell you, they organized this end of year event that happened. And so it was all virtual because we have folks globally, but there were different breakout sessions where there were employees that were showcasing things that outside of their core role that they were passionate about. So there was one person that led a meditation session. There was another person that did a cooking demo. My wife probably would have appreciated me going to that one. And then there was someone who got to show off their pet snake. I did not go to that one, but I just am so happy that that person got the opportunity to celebrate something that excites them and that they love. So I chose the meditation session. Tried not to think about the pet snake, but I really love that we got to just have those moments in time to learn about each other and really highlight those things that are important to folks outside of their day job. In addition, we also are making sure that we equip our team with those capabilities that I mentioned earlier. So our group was actually one of the first to go through our Stronger Together unconscious bias training. We had over 200 of our employees go through that training. And with that, they're able to not only learn about what biases exist, but they're able to identify them and help eliminate them from our hiring processes and things that are involved there. So that is super important. We're also providing training to our teams when it comes to reviewing our DEI data or our dashboards so they can truly collaborate with our hiring managers and our hiring teams and help and see where there may be opportunities. So all across the board, we're really setting them up for success and again, embedding DEI into everything that we do.
Awesome. It sounds like it starts here first to then
Yes.
be able to show it to those
Exactly.
that we're looking to hire. Daniel, as a Gender Cool champion from the Gender Cool Project, what is your take on whether current company cultures understand the needs of Gen Z and Gen Alpha?
So I think this is an interesting question because I come from this perspective. I've gone to a lot of companies, but I also recently have really been on social media more. And the overall what I've seen is that people think that Gen Z and Gen Alpha is lazy and that they don't want to work. And this is completely not true. My take on it is that we know our worth and we know what we deserve, and we're not going to go to a company and work for a place that does not take that into account and does not give us exactly what we deserve. And so I think that these companies need to shift how their environment is, like I've talked about previously, and also just be very aware that times are changing and that there needs to be more initiative to make change. And once again, change is scary, like we've been talking about, but it's very important. Like, for instance, decreasing the hours of work each day, decreasing the days of week that we work is very important, because I'd like to go to the fact that Gen Z and Gen Alpha has been raised in the time of the internet and social media. We have access to absolutely any information all the time. We came out of the womb being told that the earth is going to end. So with that, once this comes back to our worth, we're not going to waste our life doing
Right.
something that we do not enjoy to do.
Yeah.
And so that really, the companies need to take that into account and very much shift how they've been doing things. Because also there's studies that prove that people are more productive when they work less. And so once again, just take all this into account to shift it to more of a company and environment that fosters this productivity and creativity.
I love the mic drop of self-worth and understanding your self-worth, and work is not your self-worth.
Right.
Thank you for sharing. Tia, back to you.
Yeah.
Could you describe some of the concrete steps and initiatives that we're taking at Intuit to create a more inclusive and welcoming workplace?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the cool things that we are doing is around self-identification within our Workday tool. So it is a voluntary option that employees have. They have different options to choose from based on different ways that people can identify. So with going through that process, they're able to help us with being very targeted and intentional about our approach and seeing where we may have gaps or opportunities within the company, and that we're able to put together initiatives to help us improve in those areas. Other things that we are doing, I love the DEI partnerships that we do have that are out there. I've been able to participate in things like the Out and Equal conference. We connect with like Lesbians Who Tech, Afrotech, so many great ways for not only that we can connect with customers, potential candidates, but it really is an opportunity for our employees to be in these spaces, be represented, and really just show up in who they are, right? I love that you mentioned, you know, when you see like the colors at Intuit or things that are happening there, I can show up and change my hair any color and I feel comfortable to do so. And when you have these environments where folks feel that sense of emotional safety or that they can bring their whole selves to work, it actually helps us with igniting innovation that does exist. So a lot of great things that are happening.
Awesome. Thanks for your share.
Of course.
David, as a leader, what advice do you share with other leaders on how to create an inclusive work environment for Gen Z and Alpha, especially knowing that a third of this generation identifies as LGBTQIA+?
My first advice is it is your job, all of our job, to create an inclusive culture. It is not a diversity, equity, and inclusion team's job, a P&P job, or anyone else's job. It is our job every day. And the biggest piece of advice I have with that is you have to do that with intention. And you have to be specific about, it can't be the once a month diversity, equity, and inclusion event that you're going to hold with your team. You know, I've heard a lot today, and part of this, I wrap it in this learning umbrella. I've learned more this morning in the last 2 hours on topics than I have in a very long time. And that is engaging in something that you do not know all of the details and being okay with that and sharing that broadly. So I think that's it. And I think we have to take this seriously because it is our job to continue to create the culture of this company as we take it forward. So the number one for it as a leader is, and I consider all of us leaders, is we all have a role to play in creating Intuit as the place where everybody can be themselves and want to work. Number two is sort of linked to, I'm sure a lot of people out there on video or in here have worked in places where you feel like you cannot be yourself. I certainly have grew up in a place in most of my life where I could never identify who I was. And part of that is because you don't feel safe with those around you, where you may be judged or looked at or thought of or stopped something. And that other piece for me, therefore, is psychological safety is not a thing that we need to do once and then move away from. We heard a lot about it today, but I believe creating spaces where you can be vulnerable with your team. I do it regularly. I think I've laughed that I probably cried more in my times at Intuit than I have for years here. And part of that is I can be my true self here. I feel incredibly excited and incredibly emotional about the mission that we're on here. And creating safety at work is sharing with people where how you feel, what are you doing, and how do you create those spaces. So, you know, creating psychological safety, and that doesn't mean, in this case, by the way, we heard earlier, outing everybody into, you know, this person, this thing, this identity. It's creating that space together as a team, and how do you, you know, one of the first things I did when I come here was create cultural principles and tenets. What do my team want to be known for? And that's about celebrating on top of our leadership playbook and Intuit, but what are the things that we are going to do and what are the things that we're not going to do? So how do you create those sort of mechanisms to do that? I think, you know, you hear Sasan say earlier, but diversity in teams and companies just create better outcomes. That is not a hypothesis. It is proven. So how do you make sure that you have, as a leader, the same amount of attention on the culture that you're creating as it is about the outcome that you're driving? And you heard us say earlier, I thought that previous presentation was amazing, is that EQ will win. Someone just telling you to go do something is not going to make you do it. So how do you do that? And I think more, as you think about your other part of the question as the high percentage of LGBTQIA plus in Gen Z and Gen Alpha, how do you create more opportunities to learn and help others understand what is someone's story? Where are they coming from? And I would be remiss, and this is not in any part of the prep, so I'm just going to go off on it a little bit, they knew this when they invited me here, I think. This book, I'm presuming it's also digital, this was on the chair when I walked in here, and this has me highly emotional, but I will tell you that part of being a leader is being open to learn, and I have learned more reading this book, and there's one thing in the back of this which, if I could have ever wished anything from my parents, it would be that my parents would have sent me a letter that's on page 26 of this book. And that page 26, the letter from a mum, is a learning opportunity. Whilst it's a letter and it's in this, it's a learning opportunity for us to walk in the shoes of somebody else. And that's in walking in the shoes of a parent who is writing to their child. And I think these are the examples that I would provide to you as a leader is it doesn't have to be the big training course. It doesn't have to be the big thing. Find little examples like this and celebrate it. So.
Wow. Whew. Yeah.
I didn't read it. I'm too
yeah,
emotional to read it. But
after this.
After this,
After
we will
this.
read it.
Yes.
We can cry together.
Yeah.
Let's.
Tia, we know that everything that we've discussed in terms of our intentionality and the mechanisms that we have in place, but what about the instances where there's a need to share concerns? What do we have set up in terms of in an instance where there's something to share?
Right. So I would say first, it starts with our commitment to diversity and inclusion. We do have a really strong code of conduct,
Right.
and we do have anti-discrimination policies that exist. And with Intuit's value of stronger together, that is what guides us in these situations. Now, if something does come up, employees can, they can tell their manager, they can reach out to a higher level leader, they can reach out to an HR business partner, like those things do exist. But we also know that there may be times where things need to be talked about more and honestly, or they need to have a safe space to do that. So we have mechanisms in place where they can report that And it's not just like something that is they've experienced, but also, do they have feedback for us? Do they have questions on things that are happening? So we do have those measures in place because we take these things very seriously.
Thank you for sharing. Daniel, what is something you think companies should know about Gen Z and Alpha that they may not be currently taking into consideration?
I would like to start more on a personal note. I am personally very excited to enter the workforce. Right now, I'm attending the University of Connecticut. I am a freshman studying human rights and women gender sexuality studies and hoping to minor in sociology and diversity studies in American culture. So when choosing these majors and choosing what I wanted to do with my life, I had this idea in my head of where I wanted to work in the future. And so I'm very, very excited, and seeing a company like Intuit, just, I don't know how I would work anywhere else. I'm going to be so honest.
We're here for you, Daniel.
I have a high
We're here
bar.
for you.
I have a high bar at this point of where I'm going to choose to work in the future. But so I think that companies, they need to understand that, I mean, maybe I'm just special in this case, but people are excited. I'm excited. When I see a company like this, I am so excited to start working and get into it. But I think that when I am coming into a company, I want them to know that mental health needs to be a priority. Like I talked about in the previous question, we have been exposed to so much, especially for me as a trans person who came out when I was 7. I had a lot of interviews, and I was in documentaries, and so in those situations, I was being exposed to so much that I was not necessarily old enough to hear about. And so I have had to mature, and so has so many other people in this new generation. They've had to mature so fast. So these areas where mental health is prioritized needs to be in effect. It's very, very important, because I want to be in a place that is very conscious of my own mental health and what I need. And it'll foster an environment where people are more willing to be creative and emotional and themselves, which is so important when we're looking to create this new generation of innovative thinkers and creative thinkers, and really expand what working is in general and what our ideas around all of it is. So I'm very excited, and I think that companies need to realize that people are very excited to especially come work at places like this.
Yes. Awesome. Can I just add one
Absolutely.
thing? Yeah, so I want companies to know too that it is really about progress, not necessarily perfection in these things. So one of the areas that Intuit's really proud of is our participation in the Human Rights Campaign Foundation Index. And Intuit scored a 100, right? And so that is really looking at how we are doing when it comes to LGBTQ plus equality and things that we're doing within the workplace. And these changes did not just happen overnight. We've been participating in this index for 19 years. So we've been preparing for you, Daniel. So, but it's
I'm prepared for you, Daniel.
We're ready. We're ready. But it's work that is constantly is being done, and investing in the work and getting comfortable with the uncomfortable and making changes in order to evolve and grow. And I just want other companies to do the same and take the example and make the effort and make the investment, because this is where the innovation grows, and this is where we are successful. You'll see that we are best place to work, for innovation, for Forbes. We're on the list. So, little plug there.
Before we transition to Q&A, is there anything you'd like to share on top of that?
No, I mean, I just think the core of what Daniel said earlier is he mentioned something about, people think about it being lazy and other pieces, and I don't think we should underestimate anything about the potential that Gen Z and Gen Alpha have to bring to Intuit, and the power that this entire workforce will bring to our customers. I just think it's something we should feel massively excited about, like hugely excited, and I think that it will just unlock so much more in terms of customer benefit as the more that we create those spaces to bring this workforce in.
Excellent. Okay, so at this point, we're going to transition into Q&A. We're actually moving quite faster than we thought we would. So now that we've got that Slido link up there, we have quite a few questions already, but please add to it if there's anything that has been generated in a question that you would like to ask the group. This first question, David, I'm gonna share this one with you.
Yeah.
What are ways to balance the work with the balance of the Gen Z and Gen Alpha work style requests? More importantly, how do we continue to prioritize business outcomes with an inclusive workforce?
Yeah, I'm going to give the answer for Expert Network, maybe it's because that's where I started earlier on, is, we are building the largest marketplace of expertise in the world. And I'm very excited about that. And one of those things that allows us to do is to create opportunities for flexibility for experts or their managers and others. And Daniel mentioned something about the number of hours and others. I am really proud about the types of flexible offerings that we can offer in highly professional jobs, like an accountant, like a bookkeeper, like a tax professional, like lawyers, enrolled agents, and others, where we can provide the opportunity in either our select time or in our seasonal work and others, where we actually provide those opportunities for people to come and work hours that are suitable to them. Because, hey, guess what? This population have a number of other jobs too. So we're providing those as opportunities. The other part, I think, is how Intuit is, at its core, this whole we care and give back is something like I've never seen anywhere else I've ever been. And last year, we were really proud to bring like the we care and give back benefits to our entire select time workforce too, which are people who are working with us on a full-time basis and others. I again refer to Daniel's point of, doing good in the community. Everywhere I look, every Slack channel, every video, there is someone out there supporting something that is important to them. That for me is the core of this story, which is it is not just about these huge global corporate events that do this. This provides you the time and effort, time and space, and reward ultimately to go and do something that is suitable for you. So I think that there's a major opportunity, especially in the Expert Network for my team, is how do we create these spaces and how do we create opportunities? We hear from Gen Zers that come and work for us, then they go on vacation for the summer. Well, hey, that's great for us, that's great for them, and they continue to come back and do great things for our customers. So I think that's the largest unlock that I have in terms of expertise.
Excellent. So we have another question from Slido. Tia, I'm going to share this one with you.
Sure.
I'm a hiring manager. What are the ways I can include trans, plus, and non-binary candidates when I interview them? Any practical tips?
Sure. So we actually talk about this. I am responsible for Intuit's interview process. We call it A for A. And so we do teach this within our training when it comes to not only our hiring managers, but assessors within the process. We are incorporating how they can identify and remove bias from the process. We also encourage them to create an amazing experience for our candidates. So when it comes to those that are trans plus and non-binary, I tell my assessors to share, their pronouns if they feel comfortable. Create that space and environment that folks know, oh, well, they're sharing there, I can feel comfortable to share mine, right? And it's important we're also holding ourselves accountable through the process for everyone. So when it comes to how we are assessing talent, it's important that we really hone in and anchor ourselves in the skills and capabilities to be successful for the role and eliminate anything else that someone's trying to bring into that process. So yeah, there's great things you can do as a hiring manager.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Of course.
Daniel, this is also a Slido question. Can you provide specific examples or experiential areas of expertise that you think Gen Z and Alpha can provide that are new to the existing workforce?
Oh boy, there's so many. I feel like the biggest one is because, specifically, in my case, my family has been so supportive. We've always lived in places that were so accepting and so supportive. And because of that, and especially now that I've gone to college, I've created communities that are also so accepting and so supportive, that are diverse. And so I've been raised, and I'm constantly surrounded by queer people and diverse people. And so coming into a company, we don't need to start from ground one. We already know how to interact with people like us, and we know how to interact with diverse people. And so we're coming in from a higher perspective already. We're already aware and equipped to handle situations that come up. And so I think that's honestly the biggest one, is that we are a lot more mature than people give us credit for, and we have a lot more experience than people give us credit for. We're able to communicate with people better. And I think that another thing that needs to be hit on is how much social media plays into our life now. We're coming in, so many people are already content creating and already involved online. I mean, even for my classes, I'm learning how to use ChatGPT and learning how to do all of these things. And so we're already coming in where we have this knowledge that's already been created based on our environment, that is our world, that is so developed at this point, where they're access to internet all the time and access to so many things at our fingertips. And so we have a lot of knowledge already coming in, and I think that's really what needs to be known and where expertise are going to be used.
Awesome. Another Slido question. I guess I asked for too many questions because this sheet is getting full.
Let's go.
So
Yes.
keep
Keep
going.
it going.
Keep bringing them
Go.
on. David, how are you preparing managers and leaders for the exciting and positive disruption of Gen Z and Gen Alpha?
Yeah, well, I don't think I have the full answer for that, but part of it is, I'll tell you, someone introduced me at the same session we were talking about, the officer meeting. I got introduced to Discord, and I was completely, I don't even know. I don't even. It was a whole new world for me. What happens as a result of that is, hey, now you're going to need to go learn those and others, and I think. Manager training is as good as today. What do we know today? What are the most important things that we have to do today? And I think if we stay grounded on a couple of things. The first thing is our leadership playbook is our North Star at Intuit specifically. And whether you're out there at another company, I think whatever your North Stars, the things that are important to you, how you do that. I don't think those things are durable and how do you continue to make sure, like an example, managers creating safe spaces for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, I expect all managers to create safe spaces for everybody. And therefore, how do we provide examples in relation to Gen Z and Gen Alpha where there may be a difference? But using our core playbook and using our core leadership training, we mentioned our code of conduct, those things all are very durable. But how do you maybe provide a persona or something different that says, hey, I was really inspired earlier by such a simple question. How would you like to communicate? Text, phone, please don't tell me in Discord because I will take me a long time. But, however, what are those things? And then just, sharing what works and sharing what's not working. Our recruitment teams and talent acquisition teams do an amazing job bringing in people. But, once we get these, waves, every one of these is a learning experience. And every one of it, we're learning something new. Every city we go into, every place we go into, we learn something new. And I think taking those as inputs to managers is just examples. Different examples, different things that have worked, I think is the unlock. But staying true to the things that are important here at Intuit, if we use the Intuit example, would be our leadership playbook and the way that we get things done.
Excellent. I'd love to stay with you, David.
Yeah.
We have a question as well about a lot of our partner sites.
Yeah.
How are we ensuring that the Intuit culture is a part of theirs as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will tell you, I'm a huge advocate we use a range of third-party partners across the company to provide services. And if I use the one ours, we use outsourced providers, BPOs, that provide amazing service to our customers. And I'm actually really inspired by the work that they do because they actually have the similar programs like we have. If I use one of them, they have a program called Citizens of the World. We have another one that's called, they really are embracing workforces of the future. And what I'm trying to do is make sure that the standards of the service that we're providing is consistent for our customers, irrespective of who provides that. But let's not make just the leadership, the Intuit culture appear in these. These companies have amazing cultures that allow their people to thrive. And an example, I've learned a lot about some of our companies that work with us that have major programs for LGBTQIA, and they, if you look at the work they do, we've tied up with a number of them on women in leadership and what work are they doing. So I think the real power is finding partnerships that meet our expectations. So we have a range of expectations, which means our code of conduct, the people that we work with, our expectations on responsible sourcing, all of those things remain true. But how do we allow those cultures to come into ours so that when someone speaks to one of our customers or perhaps processes some work, they have the individuality to continue to be themselves at the same time? And we should be inspired always in any company by what others are doing out there, and how do we continue to learn and bring that back indoors to us?
Excellent. Daniel, we have a couple questions for you. The first one being, what can I, as a Gen X trans person who is an individual contributor, help Gen Z and Alpha feel most supported?
I think it's just really, making it a welcoming environment. I think that often, from what I've seen, Gen Z queer people tend to forget about the past in a lot of ways. And I think that as an Gen X person, as a queer person who is older than a Gen Z person, you have so much knowledge to give. And I think giving that knowledge to incoming people is very important, and it's very crucial to continuing the line of this is who came before us, and this is whose shoulders you're standing on. And so I think that's very important. And so it's creating a place where you're sharing information and you're sharing you're just being able to connect with each other. And I also think, going back to like the aesthetic of a place, having representation. If you have photos on your walls, what are those photos? Is it representing people? And I think that's very important. So when I walk into a space, for example, if I'm walking into a classroom or somebody's office, one of my professors' offices, if they have a rainbow flag, I'm going to feel welcomed immediately. And so just creating an open environment where you can share these stories and share knowledge and come to some sort of understanding for each other is, I think, very important, and it's going to help the incoming workforce feel very much more supported and seen and accepted, and like they have someone who's older than them to look up to and to learn from, and I think that's very, very important.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll share a little personal story. My wife and I have moved 5 times over a period of 4 or 5 years. And so a sense of community for both of us, definitely we've missed that in that amount of moving and changing locations. And in that journey as well, in 2020, I started my medical transition, and I was in a very isolated and lonely space. And what I would share in terms of a piece of advice is, make yourself available if you feel comfortable to. Right. Just let someone know that you're there. It doesn't need to be a huge gesture. You're just there. Present yourself as an available and approachable person to go get coffee with. It doesn't need to be a huge act. It just needs to help someone know that they're not alone. And that falls on all of us, especially in a space of community.
Love that.
Okay, we got more questions coming. Okay, let's see. David.
Yep.
How can we keep Gen Zers and Gen Alpha's attention? Don't think that they're lazy, but they are sorely underused. How can managers tap into their zones of genius?
Ooh. I'm borrowing that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh. You're making
welcome.
me earn it today.
Yep, you're welcome.
You're welcome. Part of it is, part of it is, I go back to storytelling, and some parts of this is, hey, guess what? I've learned more from Daniel in this hour on this stage than I would have known before. So we need to go and find out, what is the things that keep people occupied? The same as if I'm talking to someone who is different to Gen Z or Gen Alpha, we shouldn't have these broad buckets of every employee that does this job does this, and this is how we need to keep them motivated. Like I use the example of happy hours and other things. Not everyone likes a happy hour, by the way. They also don't like to go do X and Y. How do we find ways to make sure that when we create things, they're inclusive, but they're also appropriate? One of the things, I'll give an example earlier this week. I was able to share a story of one of our tax experts who has battled some of the most horrific medical things I've ever seen in my life. And he is one of the most inspiring people I've ever met. And guess what? Without me sharing that story and understanding, he had a set of requirements that were important for him to be able to come back to become to do taxes. And we were able to provide that. But that's his story. That's his thing. And that's important for him. What I think we need to do with Gen Z, Gen Alpha, LGBTQIA coming into the workforce, let's talk to them. Let's just talk. More talking, more listening. We heard it earlier. And then experimenting and creating spaces. And I think these employee resource groups, I am so proud to work in this company. When I see this work, I see the power of the employee resource groups here, and the work that you do is like I've never seen anywhere else before. And I come from very large organizations. You should be immensely proud of that. But guess what? These employee resource groups have the answers. So if you're in a business role, go talk to the employee resource groups first. And let's say, how do we find out more people like Daniel or others coming into the workforce? Hey, Daniel, what would keep you interested in this job? Would you mind telling your story? Would you mind sharing it? And how do we share that at scale? So I think the people who create and design work and design environments need to be okay with knowing that they don't know. I actually don't know. I started by saying that. So let's start there and say, we don't know, but let's find out from the people who are there and who can help us design it, because they are the future. So let's bring those people into designing their own work and designing their environments that they're eventually going to lead. Daniel, eventually, when we hire you, Daniel, will lead this company. So how do we create the pathways and runways of interesting and important work?
Excellent. On the note of hiring Daniel, Daniel, having sat on the panel at Intuit's first Trans Summit back in 2020, and hearing you mention Intuit as an organization you're keeping your eye on to come work here, 5 years later, 4 or 5 years later, what's one big thing Intuit could do differently that would ensure your employment here?
Oh boy. Let's start with an internship first.
Let's make it happen.
It's difficult. I was very young, so there's a lot that I don't remember. What I do remember from coming to Intuit is just how everything felt, the vibe of it. It was so incredible. It has always been the one thing I always go back to. When I'm thinking about my experience at Gendercool, I always go to Intuit. That was it. I mean, I just felt so welcomed. And the people here are so incredible and accepting and just lively. So, I mean, what will ensure my, it's difficult. I just think continue doing what you're doing. And when you reach your goals, don't stop there. Continue going. Continue pushing. What can we do better? What can we continue doing? And I think that's very important, to never stop. Just continue trying to strive for better, and to continue making it more inclusive, more diverse, more accepting. There's always more we can be doing, and I think if Intuit continues doing that, I mean, you're set for success. I mean, I think that's the best thing that a company can do, is be equipped to change and want to always change and continue striving for better.
Awesome. Some pieces of advice. I'd love to stay with you, Daniel. I think this question is coming from potentially Gen Z in the audience or online. And they mentioned, I love that you touched on how Gen Z and Alpha are stereotyped as lazy or spoiled for simply having boundaries in the workforce. What are some ways we as Gen Z and Alpha can continue to push past these narratives and drive for positive change when we have these stigmas associated with us?
I think it's just, when we come to work, we come with all of who we are. I mean, we come to work. When we're hired to a company, we continue pushing this is what we deserve and this is what we're gonna require you to be giving us. But when we're here, we're going to be very productive, and we're going to be creative, and we're going to create change. And so I think it's showing them the best way to do it is to just, once again, put it into action. We say this, so here's how we're going to actually show you that this is what we're doing. So, I mean, really just being productive when we are there working, and making sure the company knows that they made the right choice to hire us.
Excellent. I'd love to end on this last question, and maybe everyone has a point of view. What recommendations would you make to companies who want to increase their inclusivity efforts?
Want to go first?
Sure. I would say recommendation would be first look at what's happening inside of the company, right? A lot of the time, we look at things and we're like, is that performative? What's really going on? Like, what are you doing out there? But taking a look at what you are doing for your employees, what processes, procedures, things that exist. We do know there are systemic issues that happen. This wasn't built for everyone. And so it's important that you take the time and reflect and then do action to make change. It is not the responsibility of those communities to make the difference. It does require our allies, it requires leaders to be involved and truly make the commitment to take the steps of action that are necessary to get that progress, that no matter generationally, like however someone identifies the diversity that exists, that people can truly show up and be themselves and bring their whole selves to work. It makes an incredible difference, and the return on investment is endless. It helps retention, it helps acquisition, it helps innovation, it helps really create those environments where people can just show up and do the best work of their lives, but they can't do that until that environment provides them with that psychological safety, that emotional safety. So what is your company doing to build those things and break down those systemic issues that happen? Otherwise, you're not going to see those changes. You're not going to see those differences, and it will have an impact.
On that note, I would just add on to maybe to follow on. What are you measuring? So companies, what are we measuring? What are we rewarding? Outcomes and behavior. And I think, as we think to the future, we all have to look at, do we have the right representation? Number one. Two, are people included? That we just spoke about. So do we have the right inclusion culture, and how are we measuring it? Culture has to be measured, and we have that in a range of places. And three, how are you showing the company that, your company, whoever it may be, that you are taking action to both reward amazing results and behavior that is driving the inclusive place, but also the point that was just being made is where you will not accept it. And what will you not accept? And I think those things are crucially important. And I think the other part is, experimentation and showing when you do things amazingly well to the world. Show the world what you're doing, but also show them when you're not. And show the places of where you continue to expand and create these spaces for people. I believe diversity, equity, and inclusion is a movement. It's a movement, and it's a place that requires all of us. So therefore, companies need to make sure that the teams that are leading these organizations are capable to take them forward in a way that will create the best place for everyone to work in the future.
Excellent. Anything you want to add?
Can you state the question one more time so I can refresh it?
Absolutely. Any advice to companies that have opportunities with improving their inclusivity efforts?
I think just being vocal is a big thing. When I am reading the news, it's going to mean a lot to me if I see a company standing up for my rights and standing up for what I need. So just really trying to be vocal. And I know it's difficult, but it's very important when you're attracting queer people, queer Gen Z people to come work for you. So really just being vocal, because that'll know that going to work there is going to be a place where I am affirmed and accepted, and my rights are guaranteed.
Excellent.
What advice do you have, Eli? You have a lot. you should. What advice would you give?
I don't know if I have a lot.
Well, some.
Yeah, +1 to everything that y'all shared. I think that self-awareness is extremely key. I think being in hard conversations, it requires all of us, regardless of your role, your title, your age, how long you've worked somewhere. Steve talked a lot about the collusion, I forget what the term was, but invisible.
Silent collusion.
Yeah, silent
Yes.
collusion. We always see it, right? Everyone in the room sees when there is an opportunity for an inclusivity effort to be made. It's whether you correct someone who's misgendered someone on your team. It's standing up for the folks that surround you and having the hard conversations when you need to. That doesn't mean it's comfortable. It's very uncomfortable, but it is a requirement of all of us, and I think it's a need.
Awesome.
On that note, that ends our panel. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to hand it back off to Jess.
Thank you.
Thank you.